Have you looked at the San Diego real estate market lately and thought, why does this feel so inconsistent? One home sells in a weekend, another sits for weeks with price cuts, and the headlines make it sound like the market's either back to red hot or about to crash. It can't be both. So what's going on? I'm Melina Rizan, and I've helped people buy and sell in San Diego for over 20 years. I see this shift every week in offer strategy, seller concessions, and how wildly the results vary from one neighborhood to the next. What most people don't understand is that this change has very little to do with one dramatic moment. It's not that buyers disappeared or that sellers are panicking. The reality is that we're in a payment-driven motivation split market, which I call a pause market, where the rules of pricing, negotiation, and even loan approvals have changed. And if you're buying or selling, you can't use last year's playbook. This video isn't about hype or fear. It's about understanding what's actually happening right now, why it feels so different, and how to make smarter decisions, whether you're buying or selling, or just trying to understand your options. And if you stick around until the end, I'll share a simple way to tell whether your neighborhood is in the move fast category or the sit and negotiate category, plus strategies that work in each one. Now, the biggest thing to understand is that the market didn't break. Buyers and sellers just started valuing homes differently. Over the last few years, buyers got conditioned to move fast and give up key safeguards just to compete. Sellers got used to pricing high and still getting traction. Lenders moved quickly, appraisals felt easier, and the whole process had momentum. But when borrowing costs rose, that momentum didn't just slow down, it changed directions. And in today's San Diego real estate market, we see two speeds. That's what I mean when I say the market has paused. It means the market has become selective. Buyers are far more payment conscious. Some sellers have less urgency, and the result is that some homes sell quickly while others sit for months on end. Sometimes that happens inside the same zip code, and it isn't random. It follows a pattern. The true driver behind this shift is borrowing cost. Interest rates are the steering wheel right now. Of course, everyone still wants to live in San Diego. It's just that a buyer's monthly payment has become a bigger factor than ever before. When interest rates move, affordability moves. And in San Diego, affordability was already tight. And the mortgage isn't the only affordability pressure buyers are dealing with right now. Insurance costs, property taxes, and HOA fees are playing a major and bigger role than ever before. In some neighborhoods, especially near canyons, the coast, or fire-prone areas, insurance availability and cost can change the math entirely. Buyers aren't just asking what the mortgage will be. They're asking what it really costs them to own a certain home in the long run. That's why buyers aren't simply asking, do I like this home? They're asking, can I live with this payment? And is it home worth it? That single difference changes everything. It changes what buyers can afford, how quickly they act, how much risk they'll take, and how hard they'll negotiate. But there's another layer that matters almost as much. Some sellers aren't motivated the way people assume they are. As homeowners have aged and prices have continued to rise, there's now sitting on low mortgage rates and significant equity. So unless there's a pressing need to move, such as a sudden change in their health, they can't afford to wait. Sellers don't have to give the home away, and they don't feel pressured to slash prices just because the market feels slower. That creates a standoff dynamic. Buyers want pricing that reflects today's payment reality, and sellers want pricing that reflects San Diego's long-term value. That tension is the reason this market feels stuck in some areas and surprisingly active in others. And that leads into one of the most important changes happening right now. For sale doesn't always mean priced to sell. Some homes are listed with a clear plan. The seller is ready, the home is prepared, and the price is positioned to make the home the obvious choice. Those homes can still do very well, but other homes are what I call market tests. That's when a seller puts a price out just to see what happens without being fully committed to meeting the market. In a pause market, buyers have more choices. They compare more carefully, and they walk away faster than the numbers don't make sense for them. So those market test listings sit, collect days on market, and eventually will need to be reduced or expire. This is why you can't look at a home that's been sitting and automatically assume something is wrong. Sometimes the property is fine. It's just the price that's disconnected from what buyers are willing to pay at today's rate. And that's also why sellers need to understand that overpricing has real consequences in a high-cost market. When you're off even slightly, you often lose early momentum, and your new listing position in the first 2 weeks is everything, especially in a market like San Diego. Now, the next big change is happening behind the scenes in negotiations, and it's one of the reasons buyers and sellers feel like they're speaking different languages right now. Negotiations aren't just about price anymore. More and more frequently, they're about terms. Buyers are trying to make the payment work, which is why we're seeing more requests for closing costs, credits, repairs, and concessions that reduce out-of-pocket costs. Sellers, on the other hand, tend to resist concessions unless they truly need to move. So motivation is the dividing line. A motivated seller will work with the buyer. A non-motivated seller will wait for another buyer to come along. That's why you can see two similar homes in the same area have completely different outcomes, depending on the seller's timeline and flexibility. Before we keep going, if this has been helpful, I'd love for you to subscribe. I post weekly videos explaining the San Diego real estate market, simple terms to help you make informed decisions without hype or pressure. Now, let's talk about why all of this is happening differently from one neighborhood to another, because this is where San Diego is changing fast. Part becomes very real. Unlike some cities, San Diego isn't really just one market. It's a collection of micro markets. And right now, those micro markets are being shaped by borrowing costs, seller motivation, and limited inventory. It's true, there are more homes available than there were during the frenzy years, but supply is still tight in many San Diego neighborhoods. Since many homeowners are choosing not to list at all, buyers are sometimes left comparing only a handful of options. At the same time, new construction and large-scale redevelopment are limited by land and cost constraints. So there isn't a flood of new homes coming to reset pricing, at least yet. And then there's the supply factor most people aren't watching closely enough: policy and zoning. This is the part that often gets overlooked, but it can matter a lot over time. Policy changes can shift neighborhood trajectories. ADU rules, SB 9, and transit-focused incentives are transforming certain areas. It's not happening overnight, but these new laws create new possibilities in certain pockets, more redevelopment potential, different rental dynamics, and in some cases, a changing buyer pool. California Senate Bills 9 and 10 were passed to tackle the housing crisis by increasing density in existing neighborhoods. SB 9 is a mandatory statewide law that allows homeowners to split their single-family lot into 2 parcels and build up to 2 units on each, effectively turning one home into 4. To protect neighborhood stability, owners usually have to commit to living on the property for at least 3 years. In San Diego, SB 10 has been tabled due to strong opposition, so it's not currently in effect. It's a voluntary tool that cities can choose to adopt that makes it far easier to build up to 10 units on a single lot if it's near major transit. But while SB 10 isn't in place here in San Diego, we still have other programs for high density. In some areas, ADU potential adds value because buyers and investors see flexibility and optional income. But at the same time, other buyers are very sensitive to parking, privacy, and neighborhood character. So changes in density can affect the way we perceive long-term value. That's why it's so important to think neighborhood by neighborhood. These areas might all be part of San Diego, but the forces shaping them can be very different. So if you're buying, what do you actually do with all of this information? In a pause market, buyers win by being clear and strategic, not by waiting for headlines to change. The most important thing is to decide what monthly payment feels comfortable before you fall in love with the home online. You want to get honest about your non-negotiables, the things that truly shape your day-to-day life, like commute patterns, school needs, walkability, outdoor space, and even parking. Finally, you want to be realistic about trade-offs. In San Diego, the buyers who actually find what they're looking for are the ones who decide early whether they want a turnkey home or a cheaper fixer-upper, whether they care more about a prime location or a big backyard, and whether they're open to neighborhoods that still fit their lifestyle, even if they aren't the first ones you've seen on social media. And if you're selling, the playbook has changed too. Since buyers have more data than ever before, they compare homes more carefully and they're less willing to overpay simply because a home is available. That means preparation matters and more it used to, and pricing accuracy matters more than ever. Rather than pricing, you're pricing for a specific neighborhood and your buyer pool and your active competition this week. In this kind of market, the worst case scenario isn't selling slightly below what you hoped for. It's overpricing, missing early momentum, then chasing the market with reductions while buyers wonder what's wrong with your listing. Now, the big question everyone asks is, what ends a pause market like this? And the answer would probably come down to a change in one of these three things: borrowing costs, motivation, or time. If rates meaningfully come down, buyer demand can surge quickly. If economic changes or life events force more sellers to act, inventory and pricing behavior can change. And sometimes the market simply needs time for expectations to reset on both sides. This isn't a market waiting for a crash. It's a market waiting for alignment. And that alignment may not happen in the near future, but when it does, things can move fast and faster than people expect. Now let's recap. Because once you understand this, the market starts to make sense again. San Diego real estate is not crashing. It's shifting. We're in a pause market where payment-conscious buyers and less urgent sellers are creating drastically different speeds. Borrowing costs are the primary driver reshaping affordability and buyer behavior. For sale doesn't always mean price to sell, because some listings are simply market tests. Negotiations are more conscious heavy, and seller motivations plays a major role in outcomes. And policy and zoning changes are quietly reshaping certain pockets of the city over time, which is why local context has never mattered more. If you're thinking about buying or selling here in San Diego, the most valuable thing you can have right now is a clear picture of the market. You want to know what's happening in your specific neighborhood, what's moving, what's sitting, what buyers are pushing for, and what sellers are actually accepting. That's why I offer a free buyer and seller strategy consultation tailored to your goals. And if you're a homeowner, I can also send you a free home valuation report so you can see a realistic range based on your home and your micro market, not generic online estimates. Finally, if this video helped you understand the market better, please consider subscribing. I share weekly videos like this to help you make confident, informed real estate decisions here in San Diego. Thanks for spending this time with me. Once again, my name is Melina Rizon. I'll see you in the next video.